Okay.
Me and Pickles are both AFK in the same cell. Alright, are we
Pickles,
ready?
top
Alright,
of
alright, alright.
Counter-Strike. Let's be on this one now.
Guys ready? Who am I?
We're gonna
You're
join.
actually, I feel like Cold should be the female and Pickles should be the male. I believe there's only two
Okay, yes,
characters.
I like this way actually.
Where is my stuff at?
Like, you'll notice it. It'll, just read
Yeah.
along with me, I'll be narrating.
Okay.
He shuffled along, the large bear guards forcing him along the long, cold corridor. Barefoot, with nothing but a loincloth, he shivers as he moves along. Finally, they come to large double doors made of black wood. The grain is fine and delicate, the carvings adding to the beauty, with scenes of herds of intricate deer in a lovely dark forest. The bear guards slowly swing the doors open to a large room, a giant four-post bed to one side, surrounded by a black sheer curtains. There is also a great dresser, with a large mirror facing the bed, and many other grand furnishings. In the middle of the room is a massive black chair, seated before a large fireplace. The place seems rather dark and morbid, and he shudders. Then one of the guards shoves him forward into the room, as he staggers and gets his bearings. The doors are swung shut behind him. He turns to look behind him when he hears a gentle voice from the chair.
Do you know why you are here, human?
The voice is feminine and soft. Pickles. Pickles.
What's my character?
You're some dude that's captured.
My ship was captured by you assholes. I won't become one of you animals. Yarr!
He growls, wringing his hands, still trying to fight the shackles on his wrist. The chair slowly turns. He catches his breath. The doe that sat staring at him is one of the most beautiful animals he'd ever seen. The fur that covers her body is sleek and ebony, a rare color among their kind. Her amber eyes catch not only the light from the shimmering fire, but he himself. They hold him, steady and commanding. He finds himself feeling small beneath that demanding gaze. She holds a very long, very thin filter for a cigarette that burns with the scent of something strong but pleasant. She takes a slow drag, blowing the wispy smoke out of her nostrils with a calculated breath.
In that, you are correct, human. We have lived in these forms for hundreds of generations now. We wouldn't dream of allowing one of you to become one of us.
She slowly stands, her quaint hooves clicking gently on the black marble floor. He looks down at her black hooves, then lets his blue eyes run up those long, thin legs that he knows are deceivingly strong. She takes another drag of the cigarette as she pulls out a small black box. Turning, she approaches him.
Tell me, human, have you ever heard of a warden?
She opens the box, showing him a round little clear marble. As she drew up near, she only reaches his chest. She flicks those memorizing eyes to him.
Pickles.
No!
He takes a small step back, smelling the delicate scent of her like a clear babbling stream or a forest after a rain. And those eyes, they are intoxicating.
Are you gonna
Come
go?
A tiny smile tugs at her long muzzle. She takes the marble out of the box with the long, nimble fingers ending in small hoof-like bones. She holds the marble up to him, only inches from his face. The snapping of the box cracks the gentle sounds that had thus far been the only things he could hear during the encounter. He jumps, his heart racing in his chest, but he can't look away from those enchanting eyes.
It emanates a radiation that causes the virus to go dormant, thus turning any monoshifter back into their original form, or the first form that was infected. It also prevents someone from catching the virus, but the radiation only takes effect if it's inside someone.
Fuck, I lost my place. Not found it. He feels those delicate fingers touch his lips, the cold of the marble. His eyes grow wide. What in the hell is this beast trying to do? Then he cries out. The doe presses the burning end of her cigarette against his arm. She slips the marble into his mouth, but before he can spit it out, those hands of hers prove their strength, grabbing his jaw and pushing his head against the door, preventing him from spitting.
Swallow.
Her voice is low, but offers no room for disobedience.
Arr, go to hell.
He snarls through his teeth, trying to fight her. He feels her other hand reach under his loincloth. Her touch is warm and strong.
I've always heard humans are stubborn. Guess I'll need to teach you to respect the superior race.
Proving her fingers are a lot more nimble than he thought, his eyes roll back into his head with a groan in some pain mixed with pleasure, feeling that long, thin filter slide up his urethra. Her other hand still holds his head against the door. With the filter in his semi-erected cock, she begins to stroke him.
Swallow.
He finally obeys, feeling the marble slip down his throat easily. Her fingers slowly follow its path, caressing his neck, chest, and abdomen. Then she pulls the filter out of him, turning away as he gasps and nearly falls to the ground, the pressure in his dick suddenly gone. The filter had been thin and smooth enough that it hadn't torn anything, but that still felt weird and strangely arousing. The dough goes to the table and pours some dark fluid out of a dark red gourd into a cup-like bowl. She turns back to him, approaches him with her hips swaying seductively as she moves. She holds up the bowl for him.
Drink this.
He glares at her.
Why should I?
She smiles at him again.
You humans are stubborn. It will make everything better.
He glowers at her a little longer before taking it in his shackled hands. He takes a small sip. As the smooth, tangy fluid slides down his throat without effort, it sends warmth shooting through his body and limbs. He drinks the rest of it, still watching her. He didn't fear that there was poison in it. He wouldn't be here if they wanted him dead. As he hands her the bowl back, he blinks a few times. Everything seems so much clearer, his mind slowing in thought, but all his senses come to life. His last full thought is that it was some kind of drug, but he can't think much past that, especially when he feels the dough touch his chest. He looks down at her, feeling small in that amber case. She kneels down to his shackled feet, places the key into its hole, and opens the cuffs around his ankles. He feels her hot, soft tongue running up his leg. He trembles, his muscles twitching with his sudden arousal. I'm reading a lot. That luscious tongue of hers moves along the length of his hard gender, lingers at the tip for a moment, bringing a soft groan out of him. His skin is so sensitive to her touch. He's never felt anything like it. She then stands, grabs the chain holding his wrists together, and pulls him after her to the large bed with its blood-red blankets and sheer black curtains. He follows without protest, the drug having taken away any thoughts of resistance. She turns and eyes him with a lustful hunger. She rather likes the naked skin, all his lean, strong muscles very obvious, without a fur pelt to cover them.
You do know how to please a woman, don't you, human?
Her voice is hypnotic and lustful. He nods without thought. She smiles
What the fuck
as
did I just
she
come into?
leans against the bed, pointing down.
Then show me what value you have, human, if any.
Trembling, he kneels down, his hands running from her hooves, up those exotic long legs. Her fur is soft and glides through his fingers. He moves up her calves and further along her thighs. He hears her give out a long breath, her legs spreading with soft clicks of her hooves. His tongue finds the furthest slit between those lovely legs, tasting her sweetness. She lets out a pleased moan, feeling his strong lap at her clit. He feels her hand on top of his head, her fingers burying themselves in his short brown hair. Her other hand grips the bedpost as he keeps licking. He tilts his head back, his tongue reaching to her slit. He licks harder when he feels a shudder run through her and a long moan leaving her. She's growing wetter. He can feel her nectar on his chin, the taste of her like honey to him. Her hand is in his hair, grips tighter, her hips grinding against his experienced tongue. Oh my god, you guys don't have to read for the rest of the time. This is not fair. I relinquish my position as narrator.
Keep going, keep
It's
going.
almost over.
No, just
Oh
keep
my
going,
god.
keep going.
Fuck, where was I? He goes back to looking at clit, his fingers probing at her entrance. She gives a loud moan when she feels his fingers slip deep inside of her hole. He moves his fingers in and out of her, pounding her slit where he keeps his tongue stimulating her, circling her clit, lapping at it and nibbling. He can feel her growing close to bliss, her knees getting weak. Harsh, ragged moans continue to arouse him, glad that he can please her.
Nibbling?
This is fucking weird. He feels her shudder again, an odd animalistic sound tearing itself from her throat as an orgasm causes her walls to clench on his fingers. Her juices float down his hand. He continues to lick at her until the orgasm passes. She then rips his hair, pulling him up to his feet. She turns them around and shoves them aggressively back onto the bed. He falls backward onto the soft bed, but when he tries to sit up, she straddles his hips, shoving him back down. And she grabs the chain between his shackles and hooks it up to the bedpost around his head. He opens his mouth to protest, but her fingers touch his lips lightly.
Don't say a word.
Though her voice is gentle, it has a blade that even in his drugged state he knew to fear and obey. She runs her hands down his bare chest to the loincloth that tented up with his arousal. She pulls the offending cloth from his hips and leans down, that glorious tongue of hers starting at the base of his cock, moving up to circle his head. Then he groans as he feels himself slip into that long, exquisite muzzle. He can feel his body trembling, feel droplets of pre-cum leave him into her mouth. She stops for a moment, licking her lips.
Oh, he must taste so different.
She takes him into her muzzle again. His hips buck up to meet her, but she presses her hand down on them, forcing him still while she sucks from base to tip and then down again. He trembles and moans, feeling ready to explode. As if knowing, she stops and straddles his hips again, grinding her hips against his cock, her wetness making it easy for her to slide his dick along her cunt and clit.
You human will not come until I say you can come, understood?
Her voice is a lustful breath, but still commanding. He grinds his teeth, the urge to release powerful, but he holds back, holds it in. Then his head leans back, his hips pressing up as he feels her line him up to her slit. He rams into her as she sits back onto him with a cry of ecstasy, her hips grind against him as he thrusts up into her over and over, feeling her stretch with his size. Her walls contract around him tightly, snugly. He pants, looking up at her glorious form, silhouetted by the bright fireplace. Her nipples have grown hard and protrude from her thin fur.
User joined your channel.
Keep going. Hello?
Hello?
Confuso.
I think somebody was talking to him.
Oh.
Her hands run. I can't do the British
No,
accent.
let me do
though.
it.
But it needs to be a very British accent.
Okay, I can do a British accent.
Okay.
He pants, looking up at her glorious form, silhouetted by the bright
Oh my god,
fireplace.
that's not a British accent.
Alright.
That's
Silhouetted
like
by a bright
Cockney.
fireplace.
That's like fake Cockney. It's horrible.
Her nipples have
You guys.
That's
Okay.
horrid. That's horrid.
Her
Confusus is
nipples.
better.
Her nipples have grown hard and protrude from her thin fur. Her hands run down her as she rides him energetically. She begins to pinch and roll her nipples, her cries and moans growing louder.
By Manas, fuck yes!
She cries, her back arching to her own touch. He can feel her walls contracting again. She reaches back with one hand and places it on his thigh. She arches forth as she feels another orgasm rush toward her, her bliss swelling up and exploding through her body. Groaning, he almost loses himself in extreme arousal. By God, this still is hotter than he had ever thought any of the moaner shifters could be. He hears her animalistic cry of bliss again, and he moans with the sensation of her orgasm. She pants as it passes, leaning forward over him. Her long, black, silky, full of gold and silver, beans, bones, and hollowed gems, a proclamation of her high status, brushes her heaving chest like so many butterflies. He longs to caress it, but he keeps being reminded of his helpless state every time he moves his arms. His body straining, he drives into her as hard as he can. He soon feels her draw close to that bliss again, feels her body tensing, her voice growing harsh and ragged again. He knows he won't be able to hold back again, and he suddenly stops, panting hard. She looks at him, at first annoyed, then a smile splits her face.
Oh, how can I be so cruel to neglect your needs?
She moves along his shaft, ever so slowly drawing him out, until just his head remains within her, then slowly down until he is hilted. A groan and shudder run through him both. What? She starts to move faster and harder
Shut
on
up,
him.
whore.
leaning back again so he hits deep and hard against her button of bliss.
Oh God.
I'll
I
be
want
the
to feel
dude.
your heart. Come in me, human. Oh.
She tightens around him again, her hands reaching back to hold her up. One hand reaches even further down to fondle his testicles. With the permission given, he groans, bucking up hard into
Testicles.
her once again as she feels her body shudder and tighten, exploding into her tight hole.
Oh God, that's amazing.
She moans above him, feeling his seed soul flow around his cock and out of her, down her furry thighs. He'd been so full, and now the pressure was finally released within him. within him. His muscles relax, even as his chest heaves. He still quivers within hers as she hasn't gotten off. He looks up at her, seems her eyes closed, a look of contentment on her face as she strokes lightly at her breasts. Finally, she lays down on him, slipping his flaccid dick out of her. With a finger, she runs it up down his chest and abdomen.
Not bad, human.
She rubs at his sweaty skin, then gives his nipple a long lick. He shifts in pleasure, looking down at her.
An interesting adaptation.
He wriggles in his arms again, reminding her that there is still bond.
Oh yes. Well, you have been so cooperative. I suppose I should let you have your arms back.
She unhooks the chain from a large hook in the bedpost. With all the suddenness of a striking snake, he lunges at her, placing his chin against her long, slender throat, and shoves her back against the bed. She gasps, her hands grasping at the chain.
Bitch.
He growls, his brow furrowed in rage.
Humans have a fast metabolism.
He smugly remarks at her, at the immensely surprised look in her amber eyes. The drug's been worn off for several minutes now, and now it's my turn. She gasps as she feels his hardened cock against her hole again. A cruel grin splits her face.
This time, bitch, you're the one who won't come till I say so.
The end.
Wow, that was fantastic.
What did you guys think?
Did you
Salvador,
like it?
Resmark?
Sorry about